All right, here's question number 3. In this video, I'm going to do question 3 and 4. In lesson 1016, you're going to see that all the questions, they have parentheses. When you see an exponential expression, math problem without an equal sign containing exponents, and you see parentheses involved, most likely you're going to be using one of these rules that I highlighted in yellow. Okay, how do you know which one you're going to use? It all depends what is happening inside the parentheses. Okay, so if let me write this down. So let me show you what I'm saying. So we have here parentheses 6.2 to the negative second power times 6.2 to the negative fourth power, close the parentheses, raised to the 0 power. If you look inside the parentheses, I am multiplying two numbers, and each of these numbers is a base. Okay, so every time you have a multiplication inside the parentheses, you're going to be applying this rule, the power of a product rule. Okay, and basically what is that saying? Every number that you have that you're multiplying, or every power that you're multiplying inside the parentheses, each of those powers is going to be raised to the exponent that is outside the parentheses. In other words, we're going to raise each of these that I highlighted in yellow. So each of these, I'm going to raise it to the power of 0. So in other words, I'm going to take the 6.2 raised to the negative second power, all of that, I'm going to raise it to the 0 power, times 6.2 to the negative 4 power, all of that, also I'm going to raise it to the 0 power. It's basically like I'm going to raise each of the insides to the 0 power. See, I'm like, each of these inside, each of these powers inside, I'm raising it to the 0 power. Okay? Now, from the previous lesson, we learned about this rule, the zero exponent rule. Okay, and the zero exponent rule says that every time a base has an exponent of 0, the final answer is 1. So see, I'm down here, the last one of this table. So that means that this is 1 because it's raised to the 0 power. And this is also raised to the 0 power. This is also 1. And when you multiply those two, you get 1. And that's the equivalent expression they want you to generate. Okay? And that's how you do problem number 3. Now, let's go problem number 4. Well, let me fix that now. Here's problem number 4. Problem number 4 is very similar to problem number 3. Okay? If you look, we have a parenthesis. Let me change color here. So problem number 4, we have a parenthesis 10 to the negative 7 power times 14 to the 5th power. All of that raised to the 4th power. So here we go again. Look inside the parentheses. We are multiplying two powers. Okay, and here these are different bases. Okay, and each of these bases has an exponent. So the 10 has exponent negative 7, and the 14 has exponent 5. Okay, and we have an exponent outside the parenthesis. We're going to use again the same rule, the power of a product rule. And basically, again, what does that mean? We're going to take each of the bases we have inside. So I'm going to start with 10 to the negative 7 power. That's the first one. And I'm going to take all of that and raise it to the power of 4, which is the exponent outside the parenthesis here. Times, and then I'm going to do the same thing with the 14. So 14 to the 5th power, all of that, I'm going to raise it to the power of 4. Okay? And I apply the power of a product rule. However, each one of these here, so let's start with this parenthesis. This one here looks, if you look inside the parenthesis, we only have one base. And when you only have one base in the parenthesis, you're applying this rule. And this rule says every time you have a base with an exponent raised to another exponent, you keep the base, and you multiply the exponent. So negative 7 times 4, use the calculator, is negative 28. Times, and I'm going to do the same thing with the second parenthesis. I'm using the same rule. So 14 to the 5th power raised to the 4th power. I'm going to keep the base. I'm going to keep the 14. And I'm going to multiply the exponents. 5 times 4 is 20. Now, like I mentioned in a previous video, your answer cannot have negative exponents. So that's what I'm going to do now. So this here, the 10 to the negative 28 power, okay, I'm going to apply the negative exponent rule. All right. And remember what I said. Basically, you put it like over 1. Every time you see a negative exponent, you're flipping. So you flip 10 over 1 becomes 1 over 10. Get back the exponent to the 10, but positive. And now you're taking that answer that I wrote in green, and you're going to multiply it by the 14 to the 20th power. And finally, if you put a 1 under the 14, now we're going to do regular math. How do you multiply fractions? Top with top, bottom with bottom. And when you multiply that, 1 times 14 raised to the 20th power, that's going to be 14 to the 20th power, over 10 to the 28th power times 1 is 10 to the 28th power. And this here is another equivalent expression, another exponential expression that is the same as what you had in question number 4 with the parentheses. Okay? I hope this helps.